Aloha, I'm John Carroll, I'm a member of the Financial Accountability for Rail Mass Transit Association, and I'm here for Rod Tam, who put this introduction together. He's very sick today with the flu, and he asked to be remembered to all of you. Rod was a former state senator and also a member of the county council. Based on the State of Hawaii's Act 1, 2017, a financial audit of the city's Steel Wheels on Steel Rails project was just completed by the state auditor. Act 1 also mandated the exploration of alternatives for reaching Ala Moana Center. This detailed presentation, to be given by association member Frank Genadio, will cover an alternative mass transit option called Urban Magnetic Levitation, or MAGLEV. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Frank Genadio.
Aloha. I'll be giving a pretty detailed presentation of about 25 minutes, and I'll be reading from a script, and we'll be killing the lights. Mahalo. Okay. Back. You've got the pointer, John?
Yes, sir.
On 3. The purpose of this briefing is to provide you with an alternative for rail reaching Ala Moana, as directed by Act 1 of 2017. It involves conversion of the city's Steel Wheels on Steel Rails project to an American-designed urban magnetic levitation, or MAGLEV system, along with a rerouting of the alignment to limit future operations in what may be a floodplain. The 3 segments of this briefing are shown on the slide. They are parts of a comprehensive MAGLEV plan that can, in effect, save the city's escalating cost, behind schedule, highly criticized rail project, which also has lacked in financial accountability and transparency for public review. Other routing and technology alternatives should be examined, but this presentation is focused on one that offers a researched and detailed viable solution. Full cost estimates for MAGLEV will be shown. They are given for comparison to the existing project. The overall plan would increase the number of passengers per mile, a key criterion for measuring rail efficiency, and result in an improved level of service on our roads. Successful completion of the initial project also could result in federal funding support for an extension that would qualify as a New Starts program. The current rail plan is for 20 miles and 21 stations, known as the Minimum Operable Segment, or MOS. The current construction contract will take the alignment to Station 13 at Middle Street. The guideway will likely be completed to about the airport, roughly 12 miles, sometime this year. That is where conversion to MAGLEV should begin, with changes to the guideway as described later. The actual alignment change from the plan shown will start at Station 16 in Iwalei. The current concerns about rail stem from the figures shown in printed publications. The last figure includes debt servicing and other factors, and nobody even mildly critical of the project believes that will be the bottom line, with the most difficult construction segment through downtown Honolulu still to come. Staying the course, however, seems of no concern to local interest, such as those represented by the board of Move Oahu Forward. Apparently, the city and its backers of Steel Wheels Rail will urge moving forward regardless of cost. Note the question in this Pritchett cartoon. Aside from construction costs, operations and maintenance are continuous throughout the system's life cycle, and O&M, only partially covered by fares, will not be financially supported by the federal government, but will come out of our pockets. Projections for interim service by 2012 and full operations by 2018 were changed to 2020 and late 2025 respectively. To meet funding needs, new legislation approved in September 2017 will provide an estimated total of $9.3 billion through 2030. Later I will cover what can be done on Oahu with that amount of money through conversion to MAGLEV. Let me address how to start that process. City and HART officials always say it is too late, and federal officials would never allow changes to the full funding grant agreement without penalizing the city financially. For example, HART refers to steel-on-steel technology as required by the FFGA. In fact, that term is not in the document, which refers to, quote, light metro, fully automated, driverless rail vehicles, end quote. Both urban maglev and conventional monorail fit that description, probably better than our heavy rail. I should add that the FFGA applies only to reaching Ala Moana and does not cover extensions, as claimed by gubernatorial candidate Colleen Hanabusa in a forum last year, that it requires the city to extend the rail line to Manoa. As a former chair of HART, she should have known better. Change can be made without backing away from the 20-mile plan, as even a HART board member suggested when the $8 billion figure surfaced. City resistance goes back a decade, but a change meeting federal approval can be made, especially since the Federal Transit Administration wants to seek cost savings and may even be initiating an inquiry into rail management. Conversion here to MAGLEV is doable, but must be accepted by our elected leaders. This will not happen without the political concurrence of the local players, who would have to acknowledge past mistakes. Any meeting with federal officials, however, should not be limited to those from the FTA, which contributed to the city's problem, but should include meetings with key congressional committees that authorize infrastructure expenditures. The pitch to the new chair of the U.S. House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Democratic Representative Peter DeFazio, who wants to champion a smarter, greener infrastructure, should be, we can produce a more comprehensive rail system while staying within our budgeted allowance, but need your approval to change the rail technology to MAGLEV to do so. Expect a positive response. This is a Japanese maglev being tested at 300 miles per hour in typhoon-force winds and rain. The reason for this slide is to show you technology based on a patent for first-generation superconducting maglev by Drs. James Powell and the late Gordon Danby. This vehicle now holds the world speed record for trains at 374 miles per hour. The Chinese are working on a similar system, as well as low to medium speed maglevs. The Japanese train is being proposed for the first leg of the Northeast Corridor from Baltimore to Washington, D.C., while the American maglev team, with a much more cost-effective second-generation design, struggles to get funding for development. National-level politics mirror the situation here. These are operational urban maglev systems. Similar systems are planned for 7 other Chinese cities, and the Incheon maglev is being proposed for St. Petersburg, Russia. China is investing $1.5 billion into an industrial complex in Changsha for maglev manufacturing. No maglev is currently operational in the United States, but 21st century technology will eventually overcome the heavy steel wheels lobbying and general inertia in U.S. transit. This comparative view, used in a Mitsubishi HSST maglev presentation to the city in 2008, shows the difference in width between a maglev guideway and one for steel on steel. Not shown are the parapet walls for steel wheels that deflect noise upward and, by the way, would still leave the system twice as loud as a noise unmitigated maglev. Aside from the fact that high-rise dwellers in the urban core are not going to be happy when steel wheels roll by, the costs increase with the extra concrete needed for sound mitigation. The elephant in the room is the cost for rail operations and maintenance. HART's estimates for the MOS first full year's O&M are $127 million to $144 million. The most used estimate for urban maglev O&M is 33% vis-a-vis steel wheels. Applied to the low O&M estimate for a 30-year life cycle just for the MOS, MAGLEV savings would run from at least $2.5 billion with zero inflation to over $4 billion at 3%. Since the government will not subsidize rail O&M for a municipality of our size, MAGLEV will keep a lot of money in local taxpayers' pockets. System changes would be made using the planar conversion methods described in MAGLEV America, a book authored by Powell and Danby, for conversion of the New York City elevated and subway system to MAGLEV. The plan includes introduction of American-designed MAGLEV rail cars. The graphic shows a cross-section drawing of the conversion panel fitted between the tracks used for steel wheels trains. The methodology also allows the converted guideway to be used for those trains, with 4 delivered to date. This depicts the superconducting MAGLEV 2000 vehicle quadrupole magnet, which interacts with the guideway panels to levitate the vehicle. Magnetic interaction is both vertically and horizontally stable and is not affected by weather. When accelerating or traveling at constant speed, the vehicles draw power from the electrical grid. When decelerating, the propulsion system acts as a generator, converting the braking kinetic energy into electric power that is fed back into the grid. This is a rendering of MAGLEV 2000 on an elevated guideway. Similar to a conventional monorail in appearance, but superior in performance. The MAGLEV guideway cannot be used for steel wheels trains, so they will need to turn around at the 12-mile point. MAGLEV 2000 vehicles will be able to use the full length of the guideway. The recent concerns about sea level rise have been highlighted in media commentaries and briefings to planning organizations and neighborhood boards. The rail project's most impacted area is along the waterfront and through Kaka'ako, as shown in this PAC-IOOS graphic. Critics have called for a realignment Mauka of the downtown area and a routing to the Manoa campus of the University of Hawaii rather than to Ala Moana Center. Such a change would require federal approval, but a revised plan with MAGLEV could meet the terms of the FFGA with about 1 mile of additional main guideway. A Mauka plan would employ 2 different American MAGLEV designs. The MAGLEV 2000 system would be deployed for the trunk or main line. This rendering is of a second American MAGLEV technology known as Skytran, spelled as shown. It is a NASA Space Act company building a patented personal rapid transportation system. Its first implementation will be in Tel Aviv, Israel, and it is tailor-made for an elevated application that would stay well above any potential floodplain areas in Honolulu's financial, government, residential, and shopping districts. Its 2 to 4 person MAGLEV pods, actually operating underneath a very narrow guideway, would replace feeder buses or any consideration for at-grade light rail, and be called for by a cellular telephone application, or app. This again shows the current 20-mile routing. The red line indicates the Middle Street station site, about 15.5 miles into the alignment, with the last 3.5 of those miles as MAGLEV-only guideway. This shows a new alignment move Mauka of downtown Honolulu. It would continue as planned on Dillingham to Iwilei Station 16, the green line. From that point, the guideway would follow Liliha and then turn eastward on Vineyard, with Station 17 in the vicinity of Nu'uanu and Station 18 behind the Queens Medical Center, with the guideway then winding Mackay to Station 19 on King and Ward at the Blaisdell Center. The guideway would then use King and University to reach the south campus of UH, with stations sited at Keimoku, number 20, and perhaps McCully, number 21, and the east terminus of the main trunk line at University and Dole, or perhaps on top of the main UH garage, number 22, the orange line. The completed main line would be 21 miles. The orange lines on this graphic show 3 possible Skytran feeders. The first would be from Station 17, routed on Nu'uanu to Ala Moana to Queen to Punch Bowl to Beretania to Nu'uanu and back to Vineyard, about 2.5 miles. The second would traverse the length of Ward from Station 19 on King, about 3/4 of a mile. The third would be from Station 20, routed on Keeaumoku to Ala Moana Center, following Kona and Atkinson to the Hawaii Convention Center and returning to Station 20 via Kapiolani, Kaheka, Rycroft, and Keeaumoku, perhaps 1 3/4 miles. The total SkyTran route would be about 5 miles of guideway. The next issue is obviously about what the above plan would cost. This summary gives the MAGLEV bottom line that is considerably less than the steel wheels cost. Overall, the MAGLEV conversion and construction costs have been padded above lesser figures cited by the inventors to take into account the price of paradise. MAGLEV 2000 costs are shown in the subtotal, followed by the cost of the SkyTran guideway, plus pods and associated systems, about $15 million per mile. There is no need for any further extension of the surcharge or added fees for rail. The total shows that we will have the money we need. The next 4 slides show the breakdown for MAGLEV 2000 costing. These are costs associated with development of the first 12 miles and contracts to date, using figures derived from HART documentation. The original number for site work was $604.2 million, but a recent article on a possible federal investigation showed a much higher number for completion. The figure used here is double the projected estimate, applying only to the 12-mile completion point. That is $2.9 billion already completed to the project. The costs shown here are for conversion of the existing guideway for use by MAGLEV vehicles, modification of the maintenance and storage facility, now usually referred to as the operations center, and acquired steel wheels rail cars, as an example here, 10 4-car trains, and renegotiation with the system supplier Hitachi, Italy. It is important to note that the modified guideway also can be used by steel wheels trains. This can be done only with MAGLEV 2000 technology. This slide shows costs for design and construction of the last 9 miles as MAGLEV only guideway, adding 10 MAGLEV trains, and completion of the remaining stations to ensure meeting the terms of the FFGA with 21 miles, 22 stations, and 80 rail cars. As with systems, renegotiation with the construction company would not change the cost of its current contract, but could bring better results, basically more guideway for the money. The general costs already calculated by HART also are figured into the MAGLEV project, with most of the data coming from the HART budget. The figure for professional services, however, is from the article on the investigation, a much higher number than previously used, but it must be shown here to ensure the MAGLEV plan is viable and its cost is not lowballed. Terminating the project is now a bad option. With $2.9 billion already spent or contracted, $2+ billion estimated for removal of existing guideway and facilities, and $806 million to be repaid to the feds, it would be far better to deliver a full MAGLEV system than be left with nothing for almost $6 billion. The rail bill passed by the City Council in December 2006 listed a locally preferred alternative, or LPA, that included rail service into Waikiki, to the UH Manoa campus, and to West Kapolei, but the LPA was not funded. Tourism industry heads apparently do not want an elevated steel wheels guideway running through Waikiki. More acceptable, however, could be low physical impact MAGLEV connectivity as part of an LPA plus plan. The main line that reaches UH could be extended east and down Kapahulu to Kuhio. A new SkyTran guideway could extend from that station across Kuhio and Kalakaua to the convention center to provide rail service through Waikiki. On the west end, new MAGLEV 2000 guideway would extend beyond West Kapolei to Ko'olina, a growing source of ridership. The plan would include a large park and ride lot adjacent to the Kapolei Judiciary Complex to encourage rail use by commuters from the Waianae coast. This shows the MAGLEV 2000 extension past UH Manoa and the SkyTran link between the Honolulu Zoo and the Convention Center. To complement the LPA Plus plan, 2 more SkyTran networks can be implemented in West Oahu. Shown are the connections, distances, and costs for the 6 networks that would provide on-call service as feeders to the main line, as well as in-community transit. This shows the MAGLEV 2000 extension from the Kroc Center through Kaliloa to Ko'olina, and SkyTran networks covering UH West Oahu and Ho'opili in the east, and the main Kapolei Business District and residences in the west. This is the full locally preferred alternative plus, with the main guideway in blue and the SkyTran extensions in red. The yellow line here is the H1 freeway. Regardless of what HART does for the MOS, continuing with steel wheels for the LPA would show a complete lack of consideration for both local and federal taxpayers. This is the estimate for what can be done with MAGLEV, but I will not venture a guess for costing a steel wheels extension. HART claims its 20-mile plan will reduce weekday vehicle trips by 40,000 and reach 119,000 passenger trips by 2030. A comprehensive MAGLEV system for the LPA could up those numbers considerably. Note the number of trains, all costed in the new plan. For peak hour service, 1 train can be pre-positioned at each of the 28 stations for a 3-minute leeway with 4 trains in reserve, meeting the terms of the FFGA that HART is currently not planning to do. Instead, its plans show 5-minute leeway during peak hours. Providing rail into Waikiki and for a large number of the 20,000 plus students, faculty, and staff on the Manoa campus will increase ridership significantly, as would extending the original plan west to Ko'olina. This total cost still leaves a considerable sum for contingencies. This summarizes some of the realized benefits in MAGLEV and what might be supported later. Completion would produce an operationally superior and much more cost-effective rail system that would reduce road traffic significantly. The cost of the LPA Plus and 3 added SkyTran networks, about $1.2 billion, qualifies as a New Starts program. If the FTA funds 30%, its obligation for the current project in the 2012 FFGA, its $360 million would increase the project's contingency fund to almost 9%. Other extensions could be considered in the future, and even peak hours express service can be accommodated. The latter is possible with MAGLEV. This larger picture of the Incheon MAGLEV shows beam switching, which can be used to change the alignment as well as implement express service by adding sections of guideway at several local stations to enable bypassing them by designated express trains during the morning and evening peak hours. A similar system is available with MAGLEV 2000 technology. Obviously, the added width would be a factor in station modification. Express service would be directly controlled from the Rail Operations Center. Longer station stretches between stations will allow higher speeds. Nothing spectacular, but perhaps 80 to 100 miles per hour. City officials can no longer state that MAGLEV is unproven. The Nagoya MAGLEV has been in revenue operations for almost 14 years. Along with the Asian systems, additional MAGLEVs will materialize as more municipalities look for ways to implement mass transit that is operationally superior to and more cost-effective than steel wheels. Council moves will require considerable political will to materialize. The environmental impact statement, which never met the federally published notice of intent and should have been rejected in 2009, can be modified to show a MAGLEV's lesser impact physically, visually, and environmentally. Despite the EIS length, a supplement could easily be completed in a few months. Federal contacts and added American involvement are the keys to success. A new contract negotiated with Hitachi would actually increase its total railcar production. do not look for answers from contracted rail planners and analysts. Instead, needed are meetings with engineers and systems analysts from MAGLEV 2000 and Hitachi, the parent company of Insaldo Joint Venture, along with current construction contractors and perhaps even local architects, urban planners, and archaeologists. The earlier displays are food for thought by real experts who can develop a comprehensive plan, especially concerning the rail alignment around downtown Honolulu. If this plan does not appeal to local, state, and federal officials, we will remain mired in mediocrity. And remember that the project would be eligible for additional funding under the New Starts program if federal officials believe that the city and county of Honolulu is finally getting its act together on rail. This letter was received from the three principals for MAGLEV 2000. They affirmed their ability to implement MAGLEV in Honolulu. One of the passages in the letter states, quote, "We believe the cost estimates you presented were conservative and that a detailed design study would reveal that a superconducting MAGLEV system could be implemented at an even lower total program cost," end quote. And another indicates that, quote, "Our team is prepared to support a sponsored project led by the current AE firm, the Prime Systems Integrator for the City of Honolulu," end quote. This slide sums up MAGLEV 2000. It is environmentally friendly, safe because of automated collision avoidance systems and magnetic stability, smooth running with no vibration, much cheaper to operate and maintain with no pollution released into the atmosphere, and quieter than any other rail system. It is time to rescue the rail project with 21st century MAGLEV 2000 and SkyTran technology. Mahalo.